new beginning.
Welcome to the Grief Dreams podcast. My name is Sean Ram alongside Dr. Joshua Black. And we're here doing another podcast, doing another interesting interview. Today, we get a chance to speak with Judy Hinderer. And Judy is a wife and working mother. She has been fascinated and studied dreams for as long as she can remember. The dreams with her deceased father have been integral in her life, and they came to her at very specific times. Even though she never had the chance to meet her father before he died, she'd been able to connect with him through her dreams. Judy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So it's been a while since we actually chatted. I remember you sent me some dreams after you heard an interview that I did. And I was really excited to hear those because you sent me a bunch. It wasn't just one. You had a whole series of dreams. And I can't wait to start talking about those because I know the people who listen to this podcast will be really interested in everything.
Oh yeah, no, they were just, I didn't realize how important they were until like now, like me as an adult. When you're having them at 13, during those ages, they seem to be just very like, I don't know, like I need them more for me. But by the last one, I really feel like when I connected with my dad, I felt like he almost needed it more than I did. So, yeah.
So I can't wait to start talking about those. But before we get into the dreams, I would like to know, and the listeners would probably like to know, is why haven't you met your father? So that's the big story. So could you take us through that aspect of your grief and loss?
Sure. So my father, was killed in an automobile accident, and he died in June of 1978. The person that was driving the other vehicle, he was, under the influence, and it was a really big accident in town, and there were even other people that passed away in other cars. I mean, it was a huge accident. Now, during that time, my mother was 6.5 months pregnant with me, so I was born in September of 1978. So it was a big deal. It was a big loss. My family, of course, everyone loved my dad, but like his parents, his siblings, I mean, it was a huge loss to the family. I mean, he took care of a lot of different people. He did a lot of things, for my mom and for my brothers and sisters. And, for me and my brothers and my sister, like we grew up very differently. They're much older than I am. So that loss to them was huge. And for me, it was something that I didn't have. So that was a piece of me that was missing from day one.
Wow. That's, it's crazy how life can do that, can take away something before you really learn to love it. How, I know you have you had bond with your mom. So what has she said to you on how she dealt with that? Because I can only imagine the stress of being pregnant and then also losing your husband.
I think for her, it was very difficult. And I think she just had to, all she was concentrating on was, I need to take care of this baby inside me. And I think she sort of shut down her emotions. I think that my brothers and my sisters sort of had to deal with a lot of that stuff maybe on their own, losing my dad. And my mom was just like, I've got to just keep moving. I have to keep moving. One thing, we were putting together photographs for my mother, my sister and I, a photo album. And we had gone through the house looking at pictures. And I remember there was a picture of me in a 5x7 frame. And when we took out my photograph, underneath it had been a photograph of my dad. I think he had been in the Marines. And I'm like, how long has this picture been there? Like, I had no idea. For like 20 years, this picture sat behind my baby picture. But I think she had to sort of just cover things up and put things aside so that she could keep moving forward for me and my brothers and sister. So she sort of just had to, push that to the side. Like it was very hard because I would ask her questions, I would want to know more. And she would just sort of just like brush it to the side. Like, yeah, your dad and I got married and that was it. And I would sort of just like, well, geez, can't I have more? But I think now, it was hard for her to open those doors and go back to being a young woman and meeting my dad and being married and being in love. She just couldn't open that.
Has she since opened that
Mhm.
that door, or is it still pretty shut?
She has, and I think maybe the older she gets, she just gets more reflective. When I was younger, when she would talk about him, and it's probably like the wife thing to do. She would be like, "Oh, your dad just didn't like that couch, so I got a new one," or something silly like we complain about our husbands. But the older I got, the older she gets, the more she reflects on things that he taught her. And just recently, we saw a DVD. You know how they transfer like VHS tapes to DVDs, or I don't even think it was VHS tape. It was probably like 16 millimeter. And there was video of my dad at a wedding in like the 1960 or something like that. And she was so excited to see that that footage. And I said, "Well, how did you feel looking at that?" And she was just like, "Well, it makes me sad." And she's 79, and I think that was the first time she said, "Well, that makes me sad about my dad." Like, I think she was just really processing, like, we were young. That was my husband, and I miss him.
Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine what she went through, and so like the sacrifices she made as a parent to try to raise you guys in a way
Hmm.
that was productive, because we hear stories all the time of how grief can just like destroy you and you don't want to
Hmm.
do anything. But it's just you had you guys to, and she needed to find a way. And it's amazing how resilient people are. And I'm glad she's starting to process it now and to feel
Hmm.
those emotions, because once you do it for so long, it's almost just a habit, and you're almost too scared, or you don't know that it's even hidden as much as well as it is, just because of what you need to do to move forward. So wow, that's wild. And so for you, what was it like growing up without a father? Because that's a very difficult thing, especially in schools. They have Father's Day, like where you
Oh,
like make cards and stuff. So what was all that like for you growing up?
that used to be, that when we got to school, that got really hard. I will say, like, growing up, because I was the baby. There's about 13 years between me and my youngest brother, and then I have a brother that's 14 years older than me, and then my sister is 16 years older than me. So we sort of joke like that I was like the planned child because you know my mom and dad wanted another baby, and their kids had all been growing. So anyhow, my brothers and my sister doted over me like I was born. They had this horrible tragedy happen, and now they have this baby. So they took such good care of me. And my brothers did every single dad thing that my dad did with them, they did with me. So I feel like my dad was still taking care of me when I look back on that now. But when you get into school, that's when you have the traditional families, and kids have their dad days and things like that, and I just didn't have that. And anytime you had to make something, I think now they do this a lot more now, like making things for your mom and your dad. And even when I do this with my kids, I'm just like, God, what if I wasn't here, because I remember these feelings. But I hated it because they would say, "Well, what about an uncle?" And it's just like, I come from a large family. We're Hispanic, so it's just like, well, yeah, sure, I have like a bunch of uncles, but like, we're so big, nobody talks that much to one another, and nobody understands that. And my brothers were, young adults, and one was in the Navy, and he was gone, and making a card for somebody that's like a dad is it still just wasn't sufficient. I just still always felt like the girl that just didn't have the dad to make a card for. So so I still remember that to this day. And then other kids could be really mean. Like I had one girl, she said that I was like a bastard child. I didn't even know what that meant. But kids can be really mean, and that's what I would get sometimes. And I'd be like, no one wants to say like, "No, my dad died in a car accident." Like, it's kind of a downer when you start a conversation like that. And then other kids really don't understand that. And so I think I was also very mature because I had already dealt with that, was dealing with that reality while they were just worried about, I don't know, cartoons on TV.
Or the fact that Santa's not real. They're just getting used to that.
Well, what's funny about Santa Claus is like that was never like I never believed in Santa Claus because my mom was not going to let anyone take credit for like her work, and so at one time I thought like, no, like look at that present under the tree, Mom, that wasn't there before. And she's just like, Santa doesn't buy you presents. I buy you presents, It's like, okay, so at 7 I just knew there was no Santa. But I liked the movies and, I kept my mouth shut for everyone.
That's crazy. Wow. Well, it's, like the big thing too, children just don't know. And until you really go through it, because I didn't really know even as an adult until my father died. And, you have to, one of the things is you really have to go through it to really understand and have the compassion for others. So did any, like growing up, so you had to deal with that. Was there any other kids along your way that lost people that you were there for, like you could understand, like your friends or anything?
No, I was so, I think as a child, I was always afraid of things, and not to say that my mom, whatever, but when my dad died, she went into overprotective mode, and I totally understand that. So I was very sort of, sheltered, like in a bubble, and I didn't have a lot of friends. I would go to school, and I think I was so, I can't even explain. I don't even know how to explain myself. I didn't have a lot of friends just because I don't feel like I fit in. I do feel like I was always more aware of things, and they were very into, at 8, you're just was like, that's so superficial in your head, but you don't know what that thought means. So I would get picked on, and I just sort of just kept to myself. And I did have a really close relationship with my mom. So there was really, I talked more with like my brothers and my sister. I had a couple, maybe one close friend growing up, but, no one really understood that sort of thing or had been through that sort of thing. So to talk about it, it just didn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. When you were growing up, did you see or did you feel aspects of your father in your brothers, even from just maybe what your mom and siblings told you, or just some sort of innate feeling that, oh, that must have been what dad was like?
Yes, absolutely. And my dad was very into nature and fishing and the outdoors. And, he would take my brothers to different parks, and they would skip rocks and do all of those things. And those are the things that they really treasured, about my dad, and missed so much. And so with me, they would do those things with me. They would say, "Hey, we're going to a park today," and we'd go to a park and we'd skip rocks, and I would be, in the same places that my dad took them to, doing the exact same things, feeding the ducks, looking at, the water, all of those things. We live, I'm near Cleveland, so, we go to the lake a lot, Lake Erie, and just go check out the sunset, So I did a lot of those things as a kid, with my brothers, and they were just, they served those parts of my dad that weren't there. Is a very beautiful gift for them to give me, and I'm so thankful.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that, especially like, people say that children are kind of like the legacy of the parents passed on through genetics and closeness. I mean, you just look at, some biological kids of someone. I mean, you can look at your kids and see how much you're
Hmm.
in your children. And
Yeah,
yeah.
I do the same things with my kids. I would say, let's go find a park. Look at these rocks. Let's skip the rocks. And they love being outdoors, and they love the trees, and they love nature. And, that's really my dad's gift being passed on to his grandchildren, and he's not even here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's a beautiful thing for sure. That's a beautiful thing that they can feel that through you and through themselves, really. I wanted to ask actually about talk about, the whole, as you were growing up and being a kid
Mm-hmm.
going through school. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy sometimes, like, kids definitely can be cruel and
Mm-hmm.
mean sometimes. And you must have had that, like you said, you probably felt like something was missing. And,
Mm-hmm.
especially when kids are kind of getting at it with other kids, like they will hit to the core of like
Mm-hmm.
what another kid's going through. If a kid wants to bully another kid, they'll just get right to the bare bones painful aspect. And that's tough. I don't know, like, I'm sure, like, as an
Yeah.
adult, you don't really remember too much of it, but then, like, you think back and you're like, man,
Well, and
kids.
I was not a fighter. If someone picked on me, that was it. I was in tears. I was sad. They're making fun of me, and it's that's it. It's the end of the world. And so, I mean, I I, I don't want to say I was an easy target, but I mean, it was just anybody could say something to me, and I would have just crumbled or looked at me the wrong way. And I mean, I think sometimes I even think back to some of the teasing, and I'm just like, I would not survive in this social media age, because, it was teasing. Um, who knows what would have happened if there was, Twitter or Instagram, or I don't even know. But
Yeah.
but I was very like, yeah, I was like an easy target. Like, oh, she's gonna cry. Well, let's do this again and again. And the only person I could go to was my mom. I mean, I could go to my brothers sometimes, but and this is like, sort of the man thing, they would get really mad, they'd want to go just find somebody. And you're just like, okay, well, it's not what I need here right now.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, you probably kind of felt maybe that might have made things worse. Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like, back then, there was definitely bullying like today, but you kind of, the bullying happens at school, whatever. You go home and then at least you have a safe spot. But like,
Mm-hmm.
now, kids have their phones at home, so then, like, that becomes open territory for bullying as well. Someone could, like, talk to you on MSN. No, that doesn't work anymore. I'm
No,
old, so
right.
MSN Messenger. But Twitter or Instagram, or whatever, kids can find you, and then that bullying can continue on at home, which is crazy.
Well, and two, they can take pictures of you after they bully you. So if you're crying, they can make a video on their phone, or so it's just like
Oh yeah.
nonstop, right? Like
Don't give
it's
them
sad.
ideas.
It's horrible. And it's funny because I think because I've just sort of, because I did go through a lot of those things, and at this point, sometimes, I'm just like, if nobody likes me, then this is the best you've got now. So I don't really care. But when you're 12 or 10, you don't have those tools yet. So I'm so far, my son, he's 12 years old. He's very just like, he doesn't really care, what other people think. He has his core group of friends. And my husband and I are just like, gosh, like, I wish we could have been like that when we were 12, like that confident.
Yeah, it's amazing how, like the different temperaments of children and what they can withstand and who they are. But, once again, he has both parents. So the
Mhm.
environment's much different than what you were raised in. So,
Right.
it's that's why like environment's such an important thing for children. And that's why children's grief is such an important thing to discuss and really help them out with because, adults have hard enough time dealing with their emotions. I can only imagine children. So, like you and your journey, it's so sad that, you went through that and then you got bullied on top of it. So when did things change for you? Was it when you first had the dream? Because I know that was very
I,
comforting for
I
you.
think I think so. I think once I was getting into the 12, 13, age, I had switched schools. I had started going to junior high school. And that was fantastic because, in elementary school, you're sort of with the same group of kids until the sixth grade. So if you're picked on in the second grade, you're going to get picked on by the same kids in the sixth grade. And so once I went to junior high, there were so many other kids there. I fit in with kids that maybe just didn't fit in, but you find people that are more like you. And so for some people, the tumultuous years are the middle school years, and my middle school and high school years they were fantastic. I found my nerd clique, and I was good to go. So, but I would say that's when I had the first dream about my dad, or with my dad. Now, I had been dreaming all the time. I mean, every morning I would wake up and I would say, Mom, I had this dream, and she would, sit and listen, and she loved to listen to them, and she just seemed fascinated by them. But, when I was about 13 was when I had that first dream, and I don't know if I had just been looking at a bunch of pictures or what triggered it, but I was in a forest, I was in a park, and I was on one side of like a bridge, and there was, these trees, and then on the other side of the bridge is my dad. And I don't even know the meaning behind it now, but it was like me wanting to go forward, but I was just hesitant, like, oh, I can't do that, like I can't, I'm not going to be able to make it. And he's just was like, you can cross the bridge. You can do it on your own. You can do this. And when he said that, I crossed the bridge, dream was over. And then I remember waking up, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like that was my dad, and I'm telling my mom, no, I was just dreaming about my dad. And she's just like, what, because I had never said that before. So I wanted to go back to sleep. I wanted to go back there. I wanted to see him. I wanted to go back to this park with him. But that was just amazing, and I couldn't believe, I cried, and my mom was really happy. And I feel like my mom is besides you guys now, I feel like my mom is like the one person that if I say this happened in my dreams, she believes every word that I tell her.
Well, that's so nice you're able to tell your mom and even open up that inside her of understanding that, and the joy probably of her realizing you had a chance to see your father finally. And so what did you take that bridge for? Because I think it's beautiful advice for him. And I can only imagine as a daughter, like the one thing you're missing is that, father advice. And he gave it to you and you succeeded, and like it was a great story. But what would that bridge represent to you looking back?
Looking back, I think that was me just moving forward, losing some fear. I think I was always afraid to do things. I was always afraid that if I attempted something, I wasn't going to succeed at it, or I wasn't capable of it. And I think it was sort of shedding, gaining some independence. Like, you can do this. You're now in junior high. There are all these kids here. You've got this. You can do this. So I feel like that was just a little part of me getting some independence, getting some confidence under my belt, and him solidifying that feeling.
That's so cool. I really love the dream because like you can do it. Like I always tell myself in different circumstances in life that have been difficult, it's like you self-motivate yourself. So like has that dream just like moving forward, is it something that you refer back to when difficult times to say, no, I can do this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. When I look back at a lot of these, I can see where I used it to move forward, like I just like, well, that's right. I can do this. Yeah. And so that even sort of segues into the next one that I had, because it was just a couple of years later. I think that I'm 15. It's just high emotions, both me and my mom, because it's mother-daughter, it's hormones, it's everything. And I think sometimes during that time, I was always very self-conscious, because we're teenagers and we're self-conscious. And I would just sort of look at myself and, think like, no, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not this enough. And it must have been weighing on me in such a way that my dad showed up in a dream. And it was a very odd dream, because it was like I was in some sort of office, I was in a waiting room, like waiting to, I don't know if I was felt like I was at a doctor's office or a lawyer's office, but they're just, it's like I show up and they're just like, you know what, it's not time for you to be here yet. So it's just not your time. And then there's a man in the back and he just starts yelling for me, but it was like, it was my dad. And, I can see him and he's just like, hey, I love you. I see you all the time. You are so beautiful. I love you, and just know that I see you all the time and that I'm with you. And then when the dream ended, it was very odd. It was almost like a television screen sort of fading, And again, I woke up and I was just like, oh, wow, I'm not alone. When you're feeling alone, and I really felt like I wasn't alone anymore.
Wow, that's tremendous to get that
Mm-hmm.
type of connection when you needed it. What's it
Mm-hmm.
like? What's it like hearing it and obviously seeing it from your father as opposed to what you were getting in terms of support from the outside? Because I imagine it's not the same. It just means something different.
It's not. And those are things that I don't think I realized until I had children and until I saw my husband with my children. Like, I was okay with not, having a dad at events or things like that. But I don't think I really understood how important a father's role is until I could see my husband being a father to his children. And I think that's when I really started my grieving process, maybe a little more, was like, I missed those feelings. I missed that stuff. And so, when I was a teenager, yes, I had friends by then, and I had my siblings. But again, when you're 15, you just feel like you can't talk to anybody about anything. And I don't think I realized that I needed that dad moment in there at that time,
Hmm.
but he did show up at that time.
Yeah, and especially that age, right? Because like you said, it's kind of a time to naturally rebel, naturally kind of not really, yeah, to kind of push away from those establishments and the people around you anyways as a teenager. But here comes your father as kind of like an outside source, almost like away from the realities of Earth. And
Mm-hmm.
that seems like it would add, it would just, it would be a special thing, like just very different from, again, like everybody around you, and maybe add a little something else. And another thing is, did that add to your relationship with your father? Because now you've had two impactful dreams. I would imagine that that would kind of add to your connection.
Yes. Yeah. I think that after that second one, I knew, like, he is there. There's something there. He is close. So I don't have to feel alone. I know that my dad's just hanging out nearby, and if I just need to say something, like, if I just want to talk to him, I can do that. Like, he's there. It wasn't a fluke. The first dream, he was just thinking, well, I just saw some picture or something. I have plenty of photographs, but you're just thinking, like, that's never going to happen again. And then it happens again. And not soon, it happened years later. So yeah, I really held on to that, and it really made me feel much better.
And one more thing I was thinking is that it probably, these are, these are dreams where you're experiencing them. Obviously, it's a new thing. Whereas before you're kind of hearing about stories of your father, maybe from your siblings or your mom. Was there an
Mhm.
aspect of maybe envy that, like, they got to experience those and I didn't?
Oh yes. Yeah,
Mm.
they had a whole different life. They had a mother and a father, and they had dinner together, and they had family things. And not in a spiteful way, like, you're not thinking about that, but you're just, the life I'm living at that moment is like, my mom's got to work two jobs. It's just me and her, and she can't come to certain events, and I was always okay with that, because like I knew she worried a lot, and I never wanted to say, like, oh, I have this play that I'm going to be in. Do you want to come to every single thing I have at the school. She just couldn't do that. We just grew up in two different times. So now I value a lot of that because I have a lot of independence from sort of going through that journey. But, my brothers and my sister, they had a dad that they could go to if they needed some help. And I just didn't. I had my mom, and she would handle things as best as she could. And she did a fantastic job. I mean, she's super tough, but I didn't have another person to go to. So sometimes you are kind of just like, that would be really nice if I had a guy backing me up, but I don't have that.
Yeah, I want to just say something about that dream that you just shared. I think it's absolutely remarkable because I know, like, as a child, I had similar feelings of feeling unloved, and unsafe, and not good looking enough for the ladies, and all that stuff moving forward, and even past that. Like, there's even days today that you have those insecurities that come up that really push you down in life, and you just can't see the joy, and you feel like you need to try really hard for people to love you, and so there's so much pressure on you. And it's nice how that dream, it almost relieved that pressure, because he's saying, I love you, you're beautiful, not just outwardly, but I love you for who you are, and as my daughter. And like what that can do to that stress and anxiety that's just like feeling through you. And I just want to sort of point that out, because I think it's remarkable how powerful these dreams can be, and really focus on some of the major aspects that we're trying to go through even to this day as adults, is that strive to be loved. And you had a moment where I'm guessing you felt loved the moment you woke up, and all those other worries didn't really exist until maybe your mind started working again during the day. But like in the moment in the dream, I'm guessing you just felt fully loved and supported.
Yeah. And by two loving parents, not just my mom. Yeah, the dreams really made pictures become a person. So it's pretty amazing.
And I'm curious, were you raised in a spiritual home, or was this something that the dreams helped you develop?
Yes, well, we were Catholic, but I will say, when my dad died, I think, she had me going to Catholic school, but we weren't going to church regularly or anything like that, because I feel like she was just sort of making it. I'm going to put her in Catholic school, and that should be doing the needful. But, she was, I'm not sure what religion she was raised with, because she sort of had a really tumultuous growing up herself. But we've always strongly believed in God, and I don't know that there's ever a right way to do that sort of thing. So I just always believed in God, and she always believed that there was more, heaven, the other side, whatever. And even before my dad died, she had said that he would have dreams. Like I feel like he knew that something was going to happen. Like he would have dreams that he was alone or couldn't find his family or things like that. I don't know if those were premonition dreams, but when I would share my dreams with her, she would share some of those things with me. So she was always very open about talking about everything. Some people could say like, oh, well, dreams are the devil's making, or depending on, what you believe or what you don't believe. But we were always just very open. So we're just sort of just all very spiritual.
Wow, that's interesting. So interesting. So, all right, let's go on to dream number 3.
Okay. Yeah. So now I'm a grown up, and some of these things. It's funny because my sister's house, it was my grandparents' home, my dad's parents' home, and so we played a lot there. That's part of my growing up. And during that time, I had a dream. I had met my husband, and we had been dating, and we wanted to move in together. And no, we weren't married, and whatever. But my mom was always very progressive. She was just like, I really like your boyfriend. I really hate you, driving around all the time. I think this is fine. Like the only person I cared about, what they cared about, I only thought was like my mom. Like, how does she feel if I make this choice? And she was totally fine with it. But you have other people saying like, oh, you're going to leave the house, you're leaving your mom, and just people trying to make you feel guilty about something that's a personal decision, but I'm letting other, I'm not letting other people sort of get in my head, like, well, am I leaving my mom? Like, should I be doing this? Like, is that the right thing? I don't know. And sure enough, I had a dream where I'm at, my sister's house, and there was always a swing set, and I climb up the ladder, to the swing set, like I'm a little kid, but I'm, like 21 years old. And I get to the top of the ladder, and at the bottom of the slide is my dad. And he's just looking up at me, and I'm looking down, and he's just like, come on, it's okay. You're ready. You can do this. I slide down, and it's like he's going to catch me, but I wake up, obviously. So, so that, I woke up from that, and immediately I knew that, yes, like this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to move in with my boyfriend, and I love my boyfriend, but like I think even at that moment, like I knew that he was going to be my husband.
Wow, that's such a cool dream. Once again, it's there and it's supporting you, but also giving you that almost the encouragement and motivation to take that step. Because change is so hard. And I'm guessing with all the talk going around you and how you should stay and all the guilt that people are trying to put on you, it was a very difficult decision. And so this is amazing how just that dream helped facilitate that change in your life and transition.
Yeah, it was, but like I was able to like be comfortable and identify with it instead of like I was no longer like, oh my gosh, it's my dad. I was just like, my dad showed up, so like I know I'm on track. I'm doing the right thing.
That's good. That's good. It's funny. You almost like I laugh because like there's probably other different moments that you're struggling in life and he just never showed up. But it's like, were you struggling that much that you needed him? But then there's these other times where it's like he's there and he gives you what you need. And so I think it's kind of funny how it's like there's picking and choosing, the most important parts. Yeah.
Because there's plenty of other times where I probably was just like, where are you? Like, why am I not dreaming about you? Like, I need a decision. But I really think that he did pick and choose, like, all right, this is the one I've got to intervene with. Like, this is an important one.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
All right. So then let's move on to number 4.
Yeah. So now I'm in my 30s, and I think that's just another, you're at a different stage in life, and now you're married for at least 10, 12 years. You've got kids. You've got financial things to deal with. And my husband and I were just having a really hard time communicating about, a lot of different things internally, but for ourselves. He had lost his mother, so he's going through this whole thing, and I'm going through dealing with those things. And I'm feeling really frustrated, and we were just having a really difficult time, and I was just getting really nervous. Like, what if this is not going to work out? Like, what if this is it? And it was making me so sad. And so if anybody's out there, listening, when you get to like 12th year of marriage, I think everybody just sort of goes through almost like a personal transformation. So I think like both my husband and I were going through individual transformations at the same time. And so I was thinking about this 24/7, and I remember there was a car I had. I had a black Jeep Liberty, and I loved that car. And the only reason why I didn't have it anymore was because it just wasn't work. It was like, 8 years, it had been 8 years old, and it was dying, and I couldn't have it anymore. But I loved that car. And so I had this dream that I'm in my childhood home. I'm in the driveway, and I'm with the Jeep, and every single piece of the engine or whatever that's under the hood is outside of the Jeep. And I am just looking at all these pieces and parts, and I am just so sad because I love this car so much, and I am just like, how am I going to put this car back together? I have to put this car back together. But it's too overwhelming. I'm not going to be able to do it. I just remember being overwhelmed. And all of a sudden, my dad just comes from behind and puts his arm around me. And he just sort of squeezes my shoulder and he's just like, it's going to be okay. You're going to you know how to put this back together. You're going to do this. And it was funny because even as he approached me again, there was like a new level of comfort. Like he puts his arm around me like he had been there forever. And I put my hand on his, kind of like, what am I going to do again? And he's just like, it's okay. You're going to take care of this. After that, after I had that dream again, I woke up and I thought, okay, he's been right before. So we're going to put this back together. It's going to be okay. And then, we're going to be married 17 years this year. So instead of, I think you can get to a point sometimes where you're just like, it's just, we just have to stop this. This is, and start over. And, he was just telling me like, no, it's going to be okay. And it was. But I really feel like that was a big dream. That was an important one I needed.
Wow, that's tremendous. And just hearing about that, and during the times of your life when things are kind of confusing, and you have these problems that you're working through, your father comes in and gives you that support and comfort that you need, and takes you and gives you that comfort and solace to move forward and think of it, just calmly, and work through those problems, and also support. Again, like, you maybe don't feel that outside in your normal waking life. You're maybe not getting it, but your father kind of, taps in at that moment, which is tremendous and incredible. I can't even imagine what that must have done, and done to your relationship with your husband, and obviously, you guys work through those problems like people have. People have those times, and especially at that age, I can imagine that, if you got together young, and then you're going through so many changes together, and people change. But, again, like, just like, seems like just like the Jeep, sometimes you just gotta, reassemble things and look at it from a different perspective, which your
Yeah.
father kind of gave you.
Yeah, and it is amazing, and it, even during that time, not so much, also for my marriage, but for myself. I did a lot of things like, I started reading more. I discovered yoga. I started trying to go to church more. I just started doing all these things for myself to get myself working. I started focusing on me, get myself stronger, because that's just sort of what you need to sort of deal with everything that sort of comes at you. And so during that time, I really got my self-esteem up, my confidence, and so it was a very meaningful moment.
Man, I just wish that, obviously we're doing this podcast, and hopefully we can reach more people about this, but I just wish more people were tapping into their dreams like that. I think, all of us, including myself, we spend like a couple hours a day on social media, maybe on looking at our Instagram feeds, looking at our Facebook wall. Our dreams are almost like our internal Instagram feed, and our, like, it's providing the images and whatever, providing everything, providing, this and that. And, just tapping into that a little more might give us a little more insight into our lives.
It really does, and these have popped up just along with all the other dreams. I dream. I go somewhere every night. That's my big. I would tell my mom that, and keep. One way to always, the memory recall is important. Keeping a dream journal is incredibly important, and I, like to be old school, and I like to write it down, even as silly as they are. Like the cat, dreaming of the cat. Like I just, I sort of have make sure that I write everything down.
I look at the silliest stuff online, but we're taking in a lot of, visual throughout our day, and a lot of information in today's day and age. And again, like, for you to have that type of respect for your own dreams, look at what it's brought you. It's brought you advice, a stronger relationship with your father, even though you never saw him on earth,
Mm-mm.
which is incredible. I mean, that we just
Mhm.
just reminding everybody that you never got that chance, yet here you are developing this relationship, which is, man,
Mhm.
it's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And so, the next dream, when I'm older, the reason why I had that dream was not even for me. It was more for my brother. My brother had been going through a really, really difficult time, and he had been going through a divorce. So, like, for him, the world is just falling apart. And so I'm spending a lot of time on the phone with him, talking with him, listening. But it's just, it sucks. He has to go through that. And I remember, I had this dream, and I'm in this train station, and it's a huge train station. And I couldn't even tell you how I know it's a train station because there were no trains there, but all I can say is it was a train station. And it was big and it was beautiful, but because it was so bright, and like sun is just seeping in, everything is just seeping in, all this light. But the only two people in the train station are me and my dad. And it's almost like I was meeting him, purposely. And I had all these photographs, and I'm showing him all these photographs. It's like we're catching up. It's like we're hanging out, and it's just like, hey, look, here is my, daughter, and this is her birthday, and here's my son, and he won this award, and I'm just showing him all these pictures, and it's almost like here are pictures of things that you haven't seen. So one of the photographs is a photograph of my brother when he's like a baby, and I don't even know why it's there. But my dad's going through, he's looking at all these pictures, but the one he picks up is the one of my brother as a toddler. And he looks at it, and he is sad. And this one gets me a little emotional because it's more like my dad is sad. Like, I need to comfort him. I need to comfort this person, because it's like in that moment he's just like, I was not there for any of these things. And he's going through this rough time, and I can't be there for him. And I'm just kind of like, wow, that was like, that's like a message for my brother, not even for me. And I'm telling him, like, shows he's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. But that was the last dream I've had with my dad. And that one was pretty powerful because it turned him from a photograph or from this entity or this person that doesn't really physically exist into a real person with real feelings. Now his feelings matter.
Yeah, that is so interesting, right? Because sometimes we only get the one side of them being happy or comforting you. It's almost like a one-sided relationship in that way. But when you're comforting him, you're seeing that emotions, it brings a different bond that it's almost reciprocal. You're helping each other. And that's really what life is about in any kind of relationship, is we help each other. Like, you help your mom, right? And your mom helps you. And so I think that's fascinating. Did you ever tell your brother about the dream?
You know what? I did, and it's funny because I've had a lot of different dreams, like from different people, and you kind of go, "Am I supposed to say something?" Because I'm not some intuitive, psychic, whatever. Like, sometimes I just dream of things, and I'm like, what do I do with that? For different people. And now this one was for my brother, and if it was for my mother would have loved hearing a message, but messages weren't for my mother. This one was for my brother. And so I was sort of hemming and hawing, like, do I say something? And when I did say something, it was sort of very quick. Like, I was just like, well, yeah, I had a dream about Pop, and it was like he feels really bad about what's going on. And I don't really know how my brother took it during that time, because for him, like, the world was ending. I'm hoping that he just kind of felt something there. But again, even for my brothers, while they talked a lot about my dad, when you start opening that wound it's hard for people to go back to that moment or that time. So I know he heard me and he was just like, yeah, okay. And then I didn't want to get into anything else because I just knew that on top of the pain, talking about our dad it can be painful too. So that's something that now as an adult I realize, when you're little, you're just like, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this. And now as an adult, I realize that when they have to go back to that moment that they lost their dad, it's hard to open that up.
But here you are talking about your own father to the world,
Yeah.
and what's that like for you, actually, opening that wound?
It's not a wound anymore. I think when I was younger, it really was, but I don't even think I knew what that meant. It was just like something that I didn't have. It was like a piece. You don't realize that there's a piece of you missing, but there is. But again, like until I was, married and we had kids, and I would see like, my husband taking son and out fishing, or especially when he's with our daughter, boy, that's when I'm just like, wow, like I can see her, she has the sense of protection and security with her dad. Like, where's dad? Like, well, dad's gonna take care of us. And I don't realize that I didn't have a lot of that. I didn't have that. That's probably why I was always so frightened. I just, we're just out there to, I don't have a man protecting me. So now I feel like it's a beautiful thing that I can tap into and not be sad about. And it's not that, people shouldn't be sad. We feel what we feel. It's just that I don't feel sad anymore that I don't have this person, because I do have this person. I just can't see him.
Oh, that's amazing. And you're right. Like you have like a different form of bond, but like the bond's still there. And so you're not grieving the end of a relationship because of like how it all occurred to you. I think that's so interesting. It's just carried on in a different form. And I think that's, it's what a powerful statement of these dreams on how they sort of embodied and helped you to get to that point, to be able to talk about, to be able to have a bond and feel love and be able to support your dad when he needs you. And
I mean, who knows, when he'll need me again, or when I'll need him again. And I imagine as, we get older and we have a new life experiences, where you're start losing people. The older we get, I have friends, I have, boss that passed away, things like that. A new stage of life I will experience, and who knows if my dad will show up. Apparently he picks and chooses when that is. So I guess I have a little comfort sometimes in going, well, things can't be too bad right now because he hasn't showed up. So
isn't that something, eh? Like, oh, I guess I can handle this myself. Right? Like, it's just
exactly.
That's really funny. I'm curious, was he the same age and look the same? Like, did he dress the same in each of the dreams, or was he slightly different in any way?
I feel like I feel like when I see him, he's younger than when he passed. Like I would say maybe, like I think he passed in, he was like 42, I think, or 43. But I feel like he looks even younger than that, and that's how we're conversing. And when we're conversing, we're never like talking. I know it sounds like kind of crazy, but it's just like, I'm not verbally speaking or hearing his voice. We're like, it's like the whole thought transference thing. I'm not sure how to explain that. but yeah, I feel like he's a little younger than when he died. So
that's really interesting, because as a child, that's normal, right? But now that you're probably going to be older than him in the dreams, which is very interesting.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know if maybe that's why I haven't had one, but yeah.
That's cool. Wow. And so, man, amazing stories of continuing bonds and how dreams can play a part in that. You also mentioned a story of finding a guitar, and that's another way of you connecting with your father. Could
Yeah.
you go through that story?
The guitar is an amazing story. So I sing. My husband and I used to be in a band together. So I mean, even from when I was little, I loved singing. I'd walk around with this little recorder and I'd record myself singing. So my mom knew that I loved singing and music, and so she had, she got me piano lessons and things like that. And she really nurtured my love for the arts. And so I did like theater classes and summer stock, so I could sing and act and do all those things. Now my dad he played guitar, and that was something that everybody knew. And when there would be family get-togethers, he would show up with his guitar. He would play with his brother guitar, and they would sing together, and everyone loved that about my dad. So he had this musical aspect as well. So now, when I was in high school, I really loved stuff like Jewel. I loved singer-songwriters, and I was just like, oh, it'd be so cool to play the guitar, but I could never do something like that. Again, you have that little voice going, I can't do that. There's just no way. So when I was 18, his sister, my aunt, she calls me up and she says, "Hey, I'm cleaning, I'm moving. I have something that I want to give to you." And so I'm like, "Well, okay, and I mean, I visit my aunts and uncles, but we weren't. I wasn't at her house like all the time for her to like call me out of the blue, but she called me out of the blue, and I kid you not, it was on my 18th birthday that I go to her house. And when I get to her house, she hands me his guitar. And she had kept it after the accident, because she was afraid something was going to happen to it. And so it was just one of those things probably my mom, couldn't deal with. So my aunt took the guitar and she said, I just put it away and I left it there. And my aunt was moving into a condo, or downsizing or whatnot, and she forgot that she had the guitar. And so she gave that guitar to me on my 18th birthday. And I really feel like my dad just made sure that I got it on my 18th birthday. And at that moment, I did learn how to play the guitar.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's incredible. 18 years later,
Mm-hmm.
holding on to this instrument that your father played. So you must definitely, when you play it, get a sense, get that feeling.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's just another way, we're connected. I pick up that guitar and I will always think of him. And it's funny, like my son is, he's a drummer, but like, he has a guitar because we just have instruments in our house for whoever wants to pick them up. But when he picks up my dad's guitar, it's just, that's, that's a really great feeling for me, to see that.
Yeah, especially like something so think of a guitar, it's got such soul to it. The hands are all over it, all over all the strings, it's resonating. It's
Hmm.
it's one of those instruments that, like you said, you sit around and just play it, and everybody kind of gets that feeling with it. It's not like,
Hmm.
you can take a piano everywhere, or drums, maybe kind of, but like, just what a guitar brings. It's just kind of like perfect for that
Right.
thing.
I had played piano, but when I got this guitar, I didn't know how to play the guitar. And again, I'm telling myself I probably can't really play, but it made me go, let me go sign up for lessons. This is a sign. I'm going to go sign up for lessons. And, I took some lessons, and then I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to sing and play this at the same time. But I worked at it. I can do it. I'm not like, great, I'm not going to be on, the radio anytime soon, but it's something that I personally love to do. It's a beautiful thing, and my husband and I can share it together. But I would not have picked up a guitar had it not landed in my lap the way it did.
You must have it's an acoustic guitar?
It's an acoustic guitar.
Oh, wow. See, I can just picture you now, just like changing the strings because it must have been really out of tune. And then you're like
Oh yeah.
making it yours, going to lessons, learning fret by fret, finger by finger, and just kind of going through those motions. And it is a little bit similar like a piano. I mean, you have your scales and whatnot, but it's still its own unique thing because it's a little bit it's different because you're strumming on one and picking on the other. But what an amazing concept, that you can again foster a bond from a different angle. You've got this object that someone's already poured their heart and soul into it, and now you're pouring your heart and soul into it through song, which is tremendous. I love that.
Yeah. So it's just sometimes if I open up with a story like, hey, this, let me talk about this guitar. Some people just look at you like, oh, well, yeah, that's weird. Or, so when I found this podcast, I was just so excited. Like, I could tell these people, like, not everything that's happened, and they would understand, because it's very defining, and how dreams affect everyone is just so different depending on their life experiences. So some people don't have these detailed dreams, and they don't have these experiences. Sometimes people, depending on things that have happened in their life, they have bad dreams, so they don't like to dream. So I've noticed if I bring up dreaming, it really depends on who the audience is.
Yeah, that's something we're finding out as well. There's lots of different people in this world, and lots of people who kind of view dreams differently, and also obviously relationships, and there's so many variables involved. But you were able to obviously build this type of relationship through dreams, which is incredible. And also, like, for those listening, I think it's a great example of what can happen if you kind of give yourself the space and open yourself up to the possibility of having a grief dream in your life. This is a possibility of what can happen. That you might have the potential to kind of develop a relationship that maybe you never had before, and it can change some lives. I've heard of stories of people who their parents passed away, or one of the parents passed away, and they they've had negative dreams, but nothing positive. And in my head, I'm thinking, there's a potential there for that person to kind of gain something from that. What would you tell someone who's maybe listening to this, who is in that situation?
Boy, just to be open, really look at sometimes we might deem a message as negative, like, well, they told me something, that I'm doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing. Well, look internally. Are you, and is that really a negative thing? Are they trying to help you? I know that, one of my brothers, he's rather more religious than I am. And so he would push the whole, dream thing aside. And I finally, recently, he sort of opened up to me that he had, dreamed about our dad, and that our dad was mad at him, and he was just like, he was yelling at me. Well, during that time, my brother, when he was young, he was probably doing things he shouldn't have been doing, but that's also the result of the trauma he went through as a teenager, but he's not realizing that that what that dream probably meant was, I want you to do better. Like it is a message. He's not mad at you. He wants you to do better. And just telling me that, like he was crying, but it made him feel so much better to talk about it. And then he felt better after we talked about it, and it depends on the relationship that you had existing here with that person. So sometimes it's like, don't get too emotional when you wake up. Really just look at it from, break it down. What are they telling me? Some life lessons we learn they don't feel good, but they do push us to where we're supposed to be going.
Well, that's nice that you're able to provide a space for him to share his dream, because I think that's the most important thing that even we're trying to do, is be able to provide a space for people to normalize the experience, to not just hold it in, because there is beauty about expressing the dream, and negative or positive, about letting it go almost. And if you say it to the right person, you could maybe help understand a little bit on why it's there. That's even my own personal research. A lot of negative dreams were related to trauma, which would be very traumatic for a child, but also guilt or blame. And so you're right. If he's doing something that he feels guilty about, that dream is a great representation of that guilt, and of even that father figure saying, straighten up, like, let's get back on the horse, like,
Right.
do things differently. And that's what you're saying. Like, there's probably more meaning there, rather than just saying, oh my God, it's a negative dream, I don't want these dreams. Like, okay, could it represent in your life to help you move forward and establish, that continuing bond in your own life? So, at the end of the day, I'm gonna say, at the end of the day, I think it's great what you're doing, and for coming on here to share these dreams that you've had. It's inspiring to me, because usually we get maybe one dream, maybe two, but you shared 5 dreams in this series, and it's probably one of the first times someone has done that, which is so exciting for us.
Oh.
As a podcast, it's like, look, so it's not just, look, here's one dream. It's like, look, here's a series of dreams and how it impacted someone's life fully, from like, for over 40 years. It's like, wow, like how amazing that is, about the significance of these dreams in our lives. And I bet you're not the only one. So there's probably a ton. I know in my own life, I've had probably 6 monumental dreams with my father that have changed as I move forward in life. And I keep those very close. And a lot of people probably have those also. And it's just like, just bring up a topic and saying, hey, let's talk about this. These things, changed my life, and I shouldn't have to keep this a secret, because, maybe it'll help someone else in theirs.
Yeah. I do get very happy from, like, sometimes depending on someone at work or that I've opened up to, if they say, hey, I had this dream, it just makes me really happy that they want to share. And then I try to do my best to, like, really listen, because that's really sometimes what you just want. You just want someone to hear you, and someone to listen, and someone to believe you. So I think this podcast is fantastic. It gives people a vehicle to talk about these things and to share, because the more we share, the easier some of this stuff becomes. So
I like what you said about the listening. That's really, like, people just want to be heard. They want to be supported. And that's what your dad did for you, and you're doing for other people. So it's great, and it's a great sort of takeaway from everything today. Is like, if you open up the question, just listen to what they have to say and don't judge it. Just listen to it and ask some questions, and you're good to go. And you probably changed or elevated someone's mood for the day.
Yeah, that's right.
So our last question that we always like to ask at the end of the podcast is, if you could have a dream tonight of your father, what dream how would that look like to you?
Oh, I think the perfect dream I could have with my dad is the two of us playing music together. Yeah, something like that. Guitar, singing, or just enjoying each other's company and chatting. I would love to see him interact with my children. Something beautiful, and maybe that's satisfying to him. That would make him happy. So.
And so who has his guitar?
I have the guitar. It's in my closet right now, because I have one that I play, like I have a Fender downstairs, but my son will come and get my dad's guitar all the time and sit and fiddle around with it.
So it could be something like you're playing the guitar, maybe your dad's singing, and maybe your son's in the audience, or maybe your family's in the audience.
Yeah, like in the dream. Yeah, I don't know who gets the guitar. Does he have his own? I'm hoping like if you go to the other side, that you can have your own guitar there.
That's funny. That's pretty cool. And so what, like, do you have a type of music that you normally play?
For me, because it's like if I'm playing by myself, I like the singer-songwriter stuff. I like the Sheryl Crow and the Jewel, and it totally screams like, child of, the 90s girl. But I listen to just about everything. There isn't anything that I'll turn down. Not a huge jazz person, but it's funny because, like, my son's in jazz band, so I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta, I can do this. But I really love like folk music, rock music. I will throw some Snoop Dogg in there just to mix it up a bit, because that's just who I am.
That's phenomenal. Like a true artist, spoken like a true artist. You're adaptable. You like all types of music. And yeah, I can picture, that scene, and again, sharing something you both love, sharing a passion. Man, I really hope you get that dream tonight.
I hope so too. That would be awesome. And if I do, I'll let you know.
Beautiful. Yeah, let us know. Is there anything else you'd like to say as we wrap up?
No, I think we've covered everything. I hope that people are really open to messages that they get. Just listen and write it down. It's so important to write it down. Again, as silly as the dream could even be, it really helps you remember and recall things, and not just relative to grief dreams. They can be instrumental for your workplace, or for your personal, again, transformation. So yeah, just be open to what messages you're getting, because it's really listening to your internal self is important.
Yeah, it's very well said. And I think we've learned a lot through this episode, as well as I love the story about the guitar, because it's another way of you honoring your father. And I think if you can figure out ways of honoring your loved ones in waking life, keep them in your mind, I think that's an amazing thing for your journey as well. So thank you, Judy, and we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you guys can check out our platform at griefdreams.ca for more information on the topic. We added a donation button, and there are perks to those who donate. If you have Facebook, you can join the Grief Dreams group. You can share your dreams or hear more dreams of others. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Grief Dreams, and we like to end our podcast, as always, with love and gratitude from us to you.
I have questions. I have introduced myself. You have introduced yourself. This is a very good conversation.